Hey Matt, today I'm going to show you how to lay your own floating engineered hardwood floor. My wife and I have been wanting to update the flooring in our home for a very long time. And because we chose a floating floor, meaning it doesn't have to be nailed or glued to the subfloor, we were able to do this ourselves. This is the first time we've ever laid flooring like this. So we're going to share the tips and tricks we learned with you along the way. So if you're a beginner laying flooring, this video is for you. Now our floors were in really bad shape. This flooring has been down for multiple years. We're going to tear some of that up and then put the new flooring down. We ordered ours online and it come on a FedEx freight truck. And thank you to the Mr. FedEx man for helping us actually carry this into the house. And if you don't know, you're going to need to stack these boxes inside for at least 48 hours to let them acclimate to your home. That means you're going to have boxes everywhere. One of the floorings we're replacing is a laminate flooring, and we had a leak in our dishwasher which actually caused the laminate flooring to start buckling several years ago, and we've just kind of lived with it up until now. This laminate flooring has an MDF core, which means when it gets wet it swells and buckles. That's why we had to replace it. Before we can start taking it up, you have to remove all the furniture out of your way, and then you can remove all the quarter round, or the shoe molding as some people call it, from the floor. And because this was a click lock style flooring, it come up extremely easy. Once you got the first piece up, it was just a pull and it come right up. You can see a little bit right here where we had the water damage from the dishwasher, and you can see the coloration difference. The good thing is there was no permanent damage, it was just coloration. We did also have to remove some linoleum or vinyl flooring, and thankfully it wasn't glued down like most linoleum is. Once you get the subfloor clean, check for nails and staples and make sure nothing is poking up that's going to affect your hardwood floor when you lay it down. We're using a Quiet Walk brand name. We bought this also just out of the research. This seemed to be some of the better underlayment that you could use. It's much thicker, as you can see, versus the old underlayment we had. And to be honest, we tried to walk on the old floor versus the new floor and tell the sound difference, because the Quiet Walk was supposed to be more sound dampening. We couldn't tell any difference at all. It's a thicker underlayment and it's going to be good for vapor barrier and all that, but as far as the quietness of it, it sounded the same to us. Make sure that you cut around all of your vents, so you don't want to cover one of those up. Also make sure to tape all of these seams, and we just bought this tape with this underlayment. It'll keep those underlayment layers from moving on you while you're laying your floor and after the floor is laid. Once you're ready to start laying your flooring, open the boxes, multiple boxes, and start mixing the flooring up. You don't want to put all of one box in one area, all the next box in the other area, because you'll wind up with flooring that doesn't look right, because it'll be all one color here, all one color there, because of the way stain works. Sometimes colorations get wonky. What we actually found was if you stacked it against the wall like this, it was easier to sort and it was easier to keep out of the way because it took up less floor space. You're going to need some type of hardwood flooring laying kit. I'll drop a link to this one. It's going to help you get right up next to the wall to be able to pull the seams in tight. First thing I did was lay the first layer, or the first row, on the longest wall we had, which was the back wall. I put glue in every joint going along the wall, and I used 1/2-inch spacers to keep it 1/2 inch away from the wall. And I just cut plywood strips like this to keep it away from the wall. You'll want to be sure and vary the sizes you're starting out with. Our boxes came with multiple different sizes, so it was pretty easy to get started, but you can cut them if you need to as well. On that run, we did have a couple of vents right in the middle. Best way I found to do this was drill a hole in each corner and then cut the vent or the square out of the middle of the plank. Now let's use my jigsaw to cut this square. I used my circular saw to cut the end pieces if those needed to be cut. From there, we just started putting the flooring down. I'm using this wood glue, especially formulated for floating floors. You'll see a little squeeze out, but that's okay. This is a tongue and groove flooring, so the joints need to be glued so they don't buckle later. However, it's not actually attached to the subfloor, it's only attached to itself. We're going to put a layer of glue on the top of the tongue and one on the bottom of the groove that it's going into. That way when you mash it together, you get good squeeze out like this. And I got accused many times of over gluing, but I'd much rather just clean it up with a damp rag. It was super simple to clean up. Once you get those glued, you're going to put some tape on there. It's just painter's tape we're using. That tape's going to keep that joint from moving while the glue dries. And we left the tape on the wood overnight and then removed it the next day. And you can see the progress is going well. I use my jigsaw to cut around any obstacles like this bar that's right in the middle of the floor. You can see how much cleaner of a cut you get if you cut with the board upside down, because the way the jigsaw is cutting up, it doesn't tear out as bad. Now if you're living and working in the house, it's a disaster, as you can see here. We actually had to move the refrigerator out of that hole onto the old flooring. That way we could actually lay flooring in where the refrigerator was going to go. let that dry 24 hours, and then we moved the refrigerator back on top of it and then continued on. We did the same thing in our bedroom. We had a very heavy treadmill that we didn't want to move or take apart and move, so we just laid the flooring up to that point, moved everything over the next day, and finished the flooring. Once you get into a bigger span like this, it goes extremely fast compared to when you're having to cut around everything. The only problem is you have to take measurements, go outside, make the cut, bring it back in, put it in place. So that actually takes much more time than you would expect. We had an angled wall to deal with. That's actually the door going into the studio. Now the first one ended up just right on the corner, so I just kind of nicked that corner off. But the second one, I just used a T-bevel to find that angle to be exact. All you do is hold that T-bevel up against the flooring, push the other side up against the wall, and you can lock it in place. Transfer that over onto the board, and then you're good to go. You actually got a perfect angle there. When you put it back in place, you'll see it's a perfect fit. For the trim on your doors, you're going to want to trim those up. I'm just going to use an oscillating tool here, or a multi-tool. This makes really quick work of it because the blade on there just vibrates and it cuts that trim really easily. And I use a scrap piece of flooring so we get the exact right height. Once that's done, it fits right under there. If you don't have an oscillating tool, you can just use a flush trim saw like you see here. It's extremely easy, but the oscillating tool is much easier because you don't have to use this elbow grease. But you still get the same result. We wanted a smooth transition from the big living room area into the studio or my office. First thing we had to do was move everything out of there back into the living room, like this big heavy couch. We also used the Viking arms to help us move this heavy shelf because it was a pain to pick up on our own. So it also works out to help when you're trying to move heavy dressers, things like that. These are awesome little tools. Once we got all that out of there, it was time to remove the carpet, and it was pretty easy to move. Once you get a pry bar underneath it, you can pick it up and then it just rolls out of place. Same thing with the carpet padding. In our bedroom, where it was a bigger area, we just cut it out into 2 and 3 foot strips to help us manage it easier. You could roll it up and then take it out of there in sections. That was actually the easiest way to do it. And it cuts easily with a box knife. And thank you to whoever laid the carpet in this house for leaving these awesome razor blades under my carpet. Once that was out of there, we started removing these tack strips or carpet strips. They're around the wall. You can get those up with a pry bar. Just be extremely careful because those tiny little nails that stick out of there are very, very sharp. Then just sweep up any extra carpet padding that may have been stuck to the floor. Get all of that floor clean, and then if there's any nails or staples, get those up before you put your underlayment down. We did learn that box knife does not work well on this underlayment, and scissors, old scissors, don't work well either. Get some good new scissors. Right here where we wanted that smooth transition, we had to kind of play Tetris here because there's so many angles and parts to do. I messed up more boards here than I can count trying to cut this angle, and that's why we ordered extra. But once we got it fit, it worked out well. You can see where I cut the board right side up and it caused that tear out, and the blade was pretty dull. So be sure and keep some clean blades or new blades on hand for cutting this stuff. T-bevel again to get this angle, and then just kind of put those pieces in place. Since it was a short run, meaning from where we come into the room to the wall, went ahead and put those in first. Also be sure that you don't use anything less than 12 inches next to a wall or the end piece or the beginning piece. So you can see here, once we got everything kind of going our way, this is what I was talking about playing Tetris, because that's long piece had to fit. And the reason for that is we didn't want all those seams landing in the same place and make it look like subway tile or make it look like some certain pattern. Your eyes will pick up on that pattern, so be sure to stagger all of your joints and make it as random as possible. Just get a little extra set of hands. Once we got that in there, everything went well. Again, with the crazy angles, but once we hit that square run where everything was square, it went really fast. I even had time to play with Mia. All it is cutting each piece and putting it in place, making sure to watch for your patterns and glue every joint. When I got to the air vent, I realized that it was much easier to reach under, in other words, down into the air vent and make a mark on the bottom side of the board and then take it out and cut it. Made it fit much easier and less measuring. However, there's going to be pieces like this where you got to kind of measure and cut weird notches into everything to make it fit just right. On the very end, we did rip down the pieces as needed, however wide we needed them, but we also left that 1/2-inch gap so that we could put these spacers in there, keep everything nice and tight while the glue dries. Once the glue is dry, you can take those spacers out. Then you can see that nice transition we was looking for. When the hardwood was meeting these other floors, like this tile floor, we wanted to use transition pieces, and we used the T transition, which came with our flooring, or we bought it with the flooring, and it sustained the same color as the flooring. Just cut it to fit, and then I use this F26 construction adhesive. This stuff is super strong, and I put that in that gap, and then set the T transition in place. It will be there for a very long time. So we laid flooring from one end of the house to the other, so there was one wall in the whole house that had a gap bigger than the quarter round would cover. I ended up taking a 1/2-inch strip and gluing it to the flooring to fill that gap. And I just spread the glue on there just like I was making a cutting board. Use these spacers to keep it in place while the glue dried overnight. It seemed to work great. After we got all the flooring down, we started putting down our quarter round, which we should have done as we went along, but it's another story for another day. I just use the 1.25 brad nails. Make sure you're nailing into the baseboard and not the floor. And on the ends next to door faces, I just cut a 30-degree angle, so it kind of gave it a slope and it just didn't look chopped off there. So we went with engineered hardwood flooring for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's less expensive than solid hardwood. Number two, it doesn't expand and contract as much because the bottom layer, or the bottom multiple layers of engineered hardwood, is actually plywood, and plywood is extremely stable. In other words, it doesn't move like normal wood does as far as expanding and contracting. However, the top layer is solid hardwood, and we went with a French oak. And it's a 4mm layer of hardwood, which means it's extremely thick. As far as I could tell, as far as our research and what we shot for, it's the thickest layer that we could actually find. You can get 1 and 2mm layers. However, those aren't recommended to ever be refinished. So if you ever wanted to change the color 10 years, 15 years down the road, you wouldn't be able to with a 1mm thick layer. And if you drop something and ding it or knock a hole in it, then that thinner layer is going to damage much easier. Overall, we were extremely pleased with how this floor turned out. Now, it did take a little longer than we were expecting. In my mind, I was thinking we was going to be done with this in a couple of weekends. However, about a month of weekends and we were done with every room in the house that we were putting the hardwood in. But as you can see, it turned out absolutely beautiful. I'm glad we went with this color. I'm glad we went with the engineered hardwood. It isn't without its difficulties, and we did ruin a lot of wood trying to put it down. But as you can see, it looks fantastic after it's down. And it was relatively simple to put down for a couple of beginners like us. And since we had leftover flooring, we actually used it, this is Miss 731's idea, in the light fixture in the kitchen to kind of bring that contrasting color up onto the ceiling. I think it looks fantastic. If you like this video, you'll love this DIY project. Click that box, you get a big old virtual fist bump. Also, another one of my favorite videos that I think you'll enjoy, clicking that box right there also take you to that. If you want to learn about some of the mistakes we've made going and putting this floor in, drop a comment below. We'll look at making a 5-mistake video that you should avoid when laying the hardwood floors.